23 million American households got a pet during the pandemic. That according to the American Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals. Now, 5 years later, many of those animals are entering midlife, and that means pet parents can notice behavioral, cognitive, and physical changes in their animals. For more on what are and aren't normal signs of aging in pets, we are joined by Dr. Kelly Fishman, veterinarian and founder of Strut, animal mobility specialist. Thank you so much for joining us, doctor. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
So we were just talking and you said that dogs can go through a midlife crisis. What did you mean by that?
Yeah, I jokingly said they're not going to use your credit card to buy a Corvette, but it's something that's very important because so much of our veterinary care is front loaded at puppy care. So when you get a puppy, there's lots of visits with the veterinarian. And then about midlife, we don't maybe see the vet for problems or once a year for routine vaccination, but there isn't, any kind of understanding that as your dog enters middle life, there are some things that are happening internally that you can actually help make their senior years better by starting things in midlife. So knowing that there's things that we can do and that there are changes that pet parents can look for.
So let's first talk about the physical changes. What are the big physical changes happening midlife?
So aside from graying of the whiskers, especially it's really cute when they get the gray hair around their eyes and their nose. That just is so, lovely to see in our older dogs. They also get vision changes. It's harder for them to see, harder to smell, and then also hearing is decreased. The one that I really care about and I love to spread awareness of because most veterinarians don't know and most pet parents don't know is just like we lose muscle midlife. So we're losing muscle midlife, so are they. So dogs and cats midlife start to lose muscle, and then that just, kind of speeds up as they age and become seniors. So that loss of muscle is a big deal to me. The other big change is their metabolism slows. So more prone to becoming overweight. You fed things when they're a puppy. There was a lab and it was really hungry and he could eat just about everything. And then now all of a sudden he's kind of a little portly and you're like, I don't know, I've been the same cup of kibble since he was a puppy. That's what I hear. And I'm like, well, their metabolism is slow. So that happens to our pets as well.
So how do we adjust for those changes, the physical changes that you were just talking about?
So it's a combination of lifestyle, and then also sometimes you can do some smart supplements to kind of target the changes. So certainly with vision changes, hearing changes, some of those we have to adjust our dog's lifestyle to, adding night lights, kind of not sneaking up behind them so we don't startle them if their hearing is going down a little bit. With the diet changes or their metabolism slowing, certainly feeding less calories is what pet parents should do, especially, treats that all of a sudden you look down at them and they're about 30 calories each. And gosh, like how did my dog get a little bit overweight? So that's something I think of. And then in terms of actually the muscle, we have a great supplement for that. So you can do a smart supplement with something called fortotropin, which has been scientifically proven to stop that muscle loss in senior dogs and cats. So I always love to recommend scientifically proven things. So that's something you could do. The other thing that I like to think of is as they're entering midlife and becoming a senior, it's harder for them to digest. So I just like making sure that you have a nice digestible dog food and then adding probiotics, as long as they're dog specific, there's lots of them on the market that are quality and your veterinarian can talk to you about them. But certainly doing a probiotic meant for a dog or a cat, especially if your dog is, one that suffers from allergies, or maybe some little bit of a stomach, has a sensitive stomach.
Do we see the ages when you would talk about midlife really vary between cats and dogs?
Yeah, so it definitely varies. So when we think about dogs that are the complicated ones, because our big dogs, like our Labradors, are aging at a different rate than our little Frenchies, we have to put them into two groups. And the dividing line is 50 pounds. So 50 pounds and over, they're reaching midlife, so about a human age equivalent of 50 at about 7. So a lab is midlife at 7 and it is entering their senior years, around 8 or 9 years old. And our small breed dogs, like our Frenchies, for example, they're reaching midlife a little bit later. So around 10 is their human age equivalent of 50, and then becoming a senior more around 12. So really recognizing these this midlife time is important in our dogs because like I said, we want to make sure that they're active, healthy seniors, and realizing that these changes are starting early and being preventive is great. And I don't want to forget about our cats. So kitties start to become midlife at about 7.
Okay. Help us understand the changes that happen from a behavioral perspective. Is it true that dogs and cats become more anxious, let's say, more fearful as they age?
Yeah, so sometimes what can happen is pain can manifest as a behavior change.
Hmm.
So what that means is if you have a dog that's a midlife and they're suffering from something like arthritis, which in dogs and cats, the number one orthopedic issue is arthritis. So most dogs that are midlife and senior are suffering from it. And sometimes there'll be subtle behavior changes that you'll notice before a limp. So for example, being less playful, slowing down on walks. Maybe they have never been reactive around children or other dogs, but suddenly they are. And before chasing, working up with a behaviorist veterinarian, we just want to make sure they're cleared from a pain perspective. Also, dogs, like I said, are losing muscle, and that means they're losing strength. So if they're not as playful, hesitant to go up and down stairs, not wanting to jump in and out of the car, those can be subtle signs that your dog is experiencing some kind of underlying issue. So certainly that's something that I kind of worry about from an orthopedic perspective. And then other kind of behavioral things, like the other big thing I think of in our midlife pets is actually, and especially seniors, is like the start of what could be like a doggy dementia.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just manifested as nighttime restlessness, weird sleep wake patterns, pacing at night, being anxious, those types of things. So sometimes there are things like that are showing as our dogs are aging, which actually can be concerning, and people would want to talk to the vet about that.
Since you brought up the loss of muscle mass again, should we be increasing the exercise then for our pets to help combat that?
Yes, exactly. So just like with us, we realize that as people are aging, it's so important to stay strong, keep moving. We heard it. If you lose it, if you don't use it, you'll lose it.
Uh-huh.
So it's the same thing with dogs. So we have to keep them active. And not only keep them active, keep them healthy, but it will prevent things or kind of lessen things that we talked about. For example, that doggy dementia, if they have exercise, they could actually have they have less signs of that as they become seniors. If you do exercise on a dog with arthritis, we used to think that those dogs shouldn't be exercised at all, but we know that dogs with arthritis and cats with arthritis that move feel better. So that's also an important thing to kind of think about. And just maintaining muscle mass and strength is such a good thing to do for us and for our dogs.
And I want to end on this idea of pet insurance. Is it a good thing? Does it make a difference?
So I always say, certainly everybody is, deciding what their own financial, decisions are. But as a veterinarian, I would say that getting pet insurance, especially something that covers physical rehabilitation, or acupuncture as your animal ages, just means that when you have to make tough decisions, you can make them a bit more quickly because you know that there's a financial backing.
Right.
And you could also do, take Gold Star care without having to worry about, putting yourself in a weird financial spot. So I always recommend it. I have my own pet, my own cat, and I've used it quite a bit.
Dr. Fishman, thank you so much for this great advice. We really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandra.
Thanks for watching. We've got more great content for you, from news to the arts to the environment. So be sure to like and subscribe to WGCU's YouTube channel and follow us on our social media platforms for the stories that matter to you.